I think there have been some pretty significant things that are worth talking about in detail.
Now,
So if you're okay with that,
yeah,
let's start with some acronyms.
absolutely. OECD was the first one, right?
Okay, so the OECD, they produced a report called the Digital Education Outlook 2026.
Yes.
So these reports are a kind of, what are we learning about digital learning and what does it mean for the year ahead? And it's 2026, so of course they're just talking about generative AI. So they're not talking about any other digital education technology, it's just Gen AI focused.
And OECD have done lots of publications in the past, haven't they? So that's quite surprising, really, that you will not surprising, but they've picked big trends like data analytics, personalized learning, things like that over the last several years. So now the pivot you're saying is around AI, right?
Yeah, and they've been doing a lot of policy stuff on AI in education as well. So I think that's good. It's a big report with a lot of detail in it. So maybe we just start with a couple of headlines. Now, we have said in the past, AI is a dual-use technology. It's like nuclear. It can be used for good and bad. And probably education saw that early on. But two stats that I saw in the report just absolutely prove this straight out of the gate. So 6 out of 10 teachers agree that AI helps them with writing or improving lesson plans. But 7 out of 10 believe AI can harm academic integrity by letting students pass off AI work as their own.
Yeah.
I think it's reasonable to say those two things, that it can help learning and it can also undermine learning. It's reasonable to say both of those things at the same time, but I think there might be something different felt by students. So some of the things they're talking about here are things we've talked about on the podcast, like if students use generative AI without tutoring guardrails, they might be learning more, but their exam results are likely to go down because they are using it to do the learning for them instead of doing the learning themselves.
Yeah.
They're kind of replacing the learning process with, AI do this for me.
Yeah.
But if you give students an AI tutor, and again, I'll go back to, I think we talked about a couple of weeks ago, it could be as simple as an AI that's told not to give the student the answer, or to be a Socratic tutor, then that can enhance exam results because it's not substituting the learning, it's guiding the student through the learning. So I think it's a fair point to make, and it is about how we use it, not whether we use it. And in the report, they talk about using generative AI with pedagogical intent. So how do you use it to help you develop skills like critical thinking or creativity and collaboration? And that whole thing, they wrap up into a phrase, metacognitive laziness. So that whole issue of, if we use AI to allow us to have metacognitive laziness, then we're not going to learn things.
Yeah.
And we're going to de-skill ourselves. And this risk isn't just an education thing. This is a risk in business as well. If you go into the world of employment and you just believe everything AI tells you, that's metacognitive laziness.
And this was just for the listeners in there, in education circles, people talk about metacognition a lot. And the way I remember listening to Stephen Heppel years ago talking about metacognition, and the way he phrased that was metacognition is thinking about thinking. So you're understanding the process that you're doing to think about something. So you're thinking about your thinking. You're thinking, well, I'm analyzing this problem and I'm now kind of going to actually sit down and think about what I need to do to work through that problem. And what they're trying to say here, I suppose, is that when we stop thinking about how we're thinking, it's sounding too weird about it, then we become a bit lazy because the AI is doing the metacognition for us and we just go into the answer. So it's a bit like when you're doing further study or a master's degree or something like that, you're actually thinking a bit more detail. It's not just about the facts. It's about, well, let me critically analyze something and think about how I'm going to manage that thinking process. So really, really interesting. But I think metacognitive laziness could be our phrase for the year, because that's going to come, because this was that came up a little bit as well, the cognitive escalators and the cognitive stairs, where Simon Breakspear mentioned that in the last series last year. So it might come up more.
And it is different between learning and other things. So if I think about it, using the lifting the weights at the gym analogy, the purpose of lifting weights at the gym is not to lift the weights. The goal isn't to get the weight from a meter above the floor to 2 meters above the floor. But when I go to the DIY store, the goal of me lifting a bag into my trolley is to get it into the trolley. And so we've got that disjoint between the purpose we might use AI for in education and the purpose we might use AI for when the students go out to work. I was talking about this last week at the conference. There's a significant overlap between what we would call cheating in education and would call efficiency in employment, especially becoming obvious with AI. So there's deeper questions that I think we've got to answer about how do we help students understand the purpose of education, which is to help them learn, not to get a specific exam number. And so it's getting that bit right, and I guess making sure students stay motivated.
And teachers are always going to have that issue. I think the academic integrity versus performance is always going to be the key lever the teachers and educators are always going to be thinking about, because you want to get the gains, but you want to make sure that you're doing that with integrity as you're moving through the learning process. So that's always going to be a bit of a challenge and a pivot that people are going to be trying to manage, I suppose, going forward. So were there any recommendations out of this report? Were there things that are useful for people to take on board?
Yeah, they had a bit of discussion before they got to the recommendation section. They had a bit of discussion around assessment and kind of that reflection that we're starting to move to assessing the process rather than the final product. And in that, they were then talking about how do you make the thinking process visible and a bit more measurable? If you think about it in your maths exams, you could get marks for your thinking even if the answer was wrong. And that's starting to expand out. So recommendations, they're pretty broad. One of them was, obviously, we've got to pick the right ways to use Gen AI to support learning.
Yeah.
And that means we've also got to develop the right AI tools to enhance teaching and learning. And so generative AI tools, ChatGPT without the right learning guardrails are probably going to undermine learning. So then how do you get the right tools in place? The other thing is they talk about needing much more effective frameworks for regulating AI to protect learners and learning. So in Australia, we have the world's first social media ban for under 16s. That happened over the course of the last couple of months. Yeah. But maybe we should pair that with a rule that an AI system that's working with an under 16-year-old works differently. It doesn't tell them the answer. It looks through, this sounds like you're trying to understand something for your school assignment, so let me guide you through the information as opposed to giving you the answer. I think that's a good recommendation. The last recommendation is to make sure that as we increase the use of digital learning, we make it equitable so that all learners and all teachers benefit.
Yeah, so very interesting. They also had some predictions at the end of this OECD report, didn't they?
Yeah, they made some predictions about what's going to happen. So I'm always interested because they've done this in the past. In 2023 and 2021, they issued reports. So I went back before I started to go, do these predictions look good? Is how did the last set of predictions work? So I looked at the report they did in 2021, which was specifically about digital technology. And they talked about AI, learning analytics, robots, all the things that they thought were going to change education. So here's what they predicted in 2021. Adapted learning systems were going to be the way to personalize learning.
Okay.
So we know that's got upsides and downsides.
Yeah.
So interesting prediction. Don't think it really landed. We've not got the all-encompassing adaptive learning systems that they forecast. No. They talked about, this seems astonishing at this point. They talked about measuring and boosting student engagement with eye trackers and facial feature monitoring and gamification of learning. Do you remember when those were all the rage, Dan?
Yeah.
And it was all about learning analytics and how can we pull all this stuff together. That's no longer a big thing. In fact, I can't remember the last time somebody specifically talked about learning analytics. So interesting. And then the other thing is robots. Like in their 2021 report, robots were a big feature of it. They were going to have robots for small group teaching. They were going to have telepresence robots for remote teaching. They were going to have robot teachers for remote classrooms.
Mm-hmm. And I think some of those, the essence of those three things there, I think AI is going to advance those things on it. If you take that adaptive learning systems, AI is actually a great, maybe the missing key to drive proper adaptive learning now. The student engagement and early learning analytics, that is going to be better prepared via AI in things like Microsoft Fabric and all that kind of stuff in the background. And robots, I suppose, that kind of connection in with what Elon Musk is doing. He's kind of doing the Grok AI stuff, but also connected in with the Tesla robots, and he's banking on kind of automation. So the AI is I suppose an enabler for some of these technologies that they talked about in 2021.
But it's almost a reset, isn't it? Of going back to those ideas and saying, oh, now we can achieve it differently.
Now we can do it.
So the other thing that they had in their 2021 report was the blockchain was going to be the answer as well.
All right.
It was going to ride over the horizon on a horse and give us a universal credentialing infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So look, I therefore didn't pay too much attention to their predictions for 2026 because I think we're in an even more volatile situation. So it's probably difficult to build good forecasts for the future. So I think it's about the ideas, the recommendations, rather than necessarily the predictions where the value in that report comes from.